never let them blow. Only thought you should know. Hands held high, raise them up to the sky. Never let them blow. Go, go. I got about 100 reasons to leave the party, but I will not.
Yo, what's good, everybody? What's happening? Once again, it's your boy, James Fred. I'm back with another episode of the Artist Loft. And man, this is a crazy one. Man, listen, y'all can't hear this, but let me tell you, right outside my bedroom in the little field, woodsy area back there, my neighbor is out there with a chainsaw cutting down trees. Yo, this is wild. Like, they live off the grid, man. They cut down the trees and do their thing, but whatever, he gonna shut it down at a good time, so it's all good with me. But what's going on, everybody? I hope everybody is having a wonderful day, a productive day, and all them good type of days and all that right there. So, as we do here on the Artist Loft, man, we're going to talk all things art. And so I was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to talk about. I know it's been a minute. I'm going to get some guests on here so we can chat it up. But for this episode, I wanted to kind of, I wanted to figure out a way that I could showcase some of the pioneers of art, right? Because we all have people in the artist creative world that we kind of look up to. And when I thought about that, there was one man that came to mind. And I'm sure, especially if you're a Gen Xer, you remember on PBS watching the guy with the afro paint. His name was Robert Norman Ross, or as he went by, Bob Ross. Man, let me tell you something. I can remember a lot of mornings. Just, I think his show came on in the mornings and in the afternoons, or maybe it was reruns or something. I don't know, but it seems like I would see it a couple times a day. But man, Bob Ross was a pioneer. Like, if you're a painter, I am probably 100% certain. Let me say 99.9% certain that you heard of Bob Ross, that you watched The Joy of Painting, which was the name of his show that came on public television. And if you're just a creative in general, I'm probably 95% sure that you heard of it. So I wanted to talk about Bob for a minute, because we know him as the guy with the afro that paints. But man, Bob really kind of did some things. So he was just, your regular cat. He grew up in Florida, and he started painting like in his teens, going into his 20s, right? At first, he was a carpenter. He worked for his daddy. And the one thing that I did not notice that I found out about Bob Ross was that while he was a carpenter, he actually lost his finger. If you on the show, you're not gonna see it for real because of how the camera shots were, and he was careful. He always held his paint palette in his left hand, so you couldn't really see it. And when there was a close-up shot of the paint or whatever, he made sure his cameramen were careful not to really catch it. The only time you see it is when the wider shots and he's holding his paint palette, and you would have to zoom in to really see it. But he lost a finger, but it didn't stop him from painting. Now, this is where Bob Ross really, what made me want to really dig in and learn about him was not only just his passion for painting and art, but it was his mindset of I'm doing something and I believe everybody else can do it. Like he really believed that painting was something that everybody can do. So the technique that he used was something that he didn't invent, right? Back in the 70s, there was a German guy on TV by the name of Bob Anderson or William Anderson. He had a painting show called, I believe it was The Magic of Painting. And on his show, he did a technique that people just hadn't really seen before, especially with oil paints. He did a technique and it was a wet on wet technique. So normally with oil painting, you have to paint a layer and then let it dry. Paint another layer, then let it dry. And so every time you wanted to add a layer to add depth to your painting, you had to wait until that previous layer was dry, right? So Bob Anderson developed this wet on wet technique, which said that a thin paint a thin paint will stick to a thick paint. So it was wet on wet. So he would do his layers while the paint was still wet. So normally he would cover the canvas in what they call a liquid white or whatever. So the canvas would be wet, and then he would start applying his layers. So when you think of depth, right? So you think of something that's close and something that's far away. So the things that he wanted to do that were far away, those things he would paint, and then he would just layer forward. But these things back here, man, it was just a whole thing. Well, Bob Ross saw this while he was working at a bar, and was able to go and meet Bob Anderson, and Bob taught him this technique, and that sparked it all. When Bob Anderson taught Bob Ross the technique, man, Ross just took it to a whole nother level. And because he was in the military, he lived in Alaska for like 12 years or something like that. So he fell in love with the mountains and stuff in Alaska. So if you notice, if you go back and watch the show, a lot of his paintings have these snow-capped mountains, and that's where he got it from. That's his love for those mountains. That's why he painted them so much. But the technique that Bob Ross kind of perfected really, listen, y'all remember watching the show and then looking at that thinking, man, I can do that. Like Bob was just going across that canvas, man, and he had, his 2-inch brush and doing his little crisscross strokes and was making a sky, and you looking at all this like, man, I can do that for real. Like, this ain't hard. And then you try it and you realize that it's simple, but it still requires technique, so it requires a lot of practice. But the way that he did it, and it was purposeful, it was intentional. He wanted it to be simple. So he just went around, man, and started teaching classes with this painting method. Like he hit the road and was just teaching this painting method. Sometimes he would go places. I remember they told a story one time about I think it was either at a mall or it was at a craft show or something. But only one person showed up, and Bob taught that one guy. He taught that one guy the technique. And so the story goes that the guy that he taught ended up being a businessman. He had a lot of money. So he offered Bob $1 million. And he said, I'm going to give you this $1 million to blow this up. Only thing I want is 40% of everything you make. Come on, man. Y'all know how that went. Y'all know Bob turned that down. Come on. You know we ain't doing that here. We ain't doing none of that, man. So it was Bob was so passionate about his art and about his creativity that he wasn't going to be sold. He wanted to paint and he wanted to teach people painting. That's what he wanted to do. There was a time when Oprah Winfrey wanted him and his wife to come on her show. And Bob said, okay, you want me to come on so I can paint? And Oprah said, no, I'm doing a show about couples that are in business together. Bob said, man, y'all kick rocks with that, man. Y'all raise up. We ain't doing that right there. He wanted to paint, man. He really wanted to paint. And y'all don't mind me. I'm just looking at my notes here. There were some things that I know I wanted to make sure that I talked about. But yeah, he wanted to paint. And excuse me. If you go and watch the Joy of Painting show, how Bob Ross was on that show was all intentional. It was set up that way from how soft he talked, from making sure that there was a microphone close enough so you could hear the brush and the palette knife hitting the canvas, all the camera shots, the close-up shots, like Bob literally sculpted all of this. Even how the set was, if you notice, the set was just black. Like there was nothing in it. The original idea, they wanted it set up to make it look like he was inside of a log cabin painting. And he didn't want that. He wanted it to be so intimate. Because to him, while he's talking to the camera, he's talking to one person. In his mind, he's just talking to one person and showing this one person how to paint. And that's it. His signature, his hair that became his trademark. Originally, Bob didn't like his hair. He didn't like the hair at all. What happened was when he struck out on the road, man, he didn't have a lot of money at all. He didn't have a lot of money. So one way he figured he could save money was to, because he used to have one of them back in the day 70s slick, like, or like John Travolta or something, like one of them type hairdos that required a lot of maintenance and haircuts and stuff. But he was trying to save money any way he could because he was trying to put it all into him traveling and doing his thing. So he so he permed his hair so he wouldn't have to cut it. And it got curly and it curled up. And when he started really pushing and going out and teaching, it was his hair that people kind of noticed because it grew pretty fast. And so it just became his brand. It became his trademark. Like if you go and look at his paint sets that they still sell on Amazon and stuff like that, you don't see his head with the fro. That was his thing, man. But he didn't like it, though. He didn't like it, but it had become a trademark. It had become, a symbol of his brand. So there really wasn't nothing he could do about it, for real. So he just held on to it. And that's all we knew about him. Like back then, we didn't even really know his name. Even though, when the show came on, it said The Joy of Painting with Bob Ross. We didn't know his name. But him pioneering that technique and then teaching it to people. Right now, there are a little over 2,000 Bob Ross painting instructors that still go across the country teaching this wet on wet technique right now, today, 2025. 2,000 instructors that are teaching this, certified instructors, I might say, that are still teaching this wet on wet painting method to people. One thing about Bob is art, painting, all of that to him was, first of all, like I said, something that everybody could do. And it was a way for people to really just bloom out their imaginations and create whatever world they wanted to create. So they could grab a canvas, grab their brushes and the paint, and literally create their own world. Bob believed that, he preached that, and that was his thing. He was also an animal lover. Some of y'all probably don't remember that on a lot of his shows, he used to bring animals because he would talk about he rescued animals and all that kind of stuff, and he would bring them to the set sometimes. And sometimes he would take a break painting and show you the animal, but more times than not, he had this little squirrel that used to be in his shirt pocket. And sometimes he would talk about the squirrel. Sometimes there were shows where he didn't mention the squirrel, but you'd see its head pop up out of his pocket. Like, yeah, it was crazy. But the guy was very methodical in what he did, even in how he dressed. Like, his thought process, man, just blew me away. So the way he dressed, he always had a button-down dress shirt on. Something real simple. But the purpose of that is that he said he knew he was going to be on TV for a long time. And he wanted to wear something that would just grow with the times. Come on, man, a dress shirt is a dress shirt. You know what I'm saying? A dress shirt is a dress shirt. For us, it's not that big of a deal, but for him to think about that, like, I don't want to be on here with a bunch of different types of clothes on and all of that. So just a dress shirt. But that TV show, man, that TV show was something else. And we might not have realized it when we were younger, but Bob was really sowing these seeds into our imagination, because you would watch him paint and he would just be flying, man, like flying across that canvas, just doing stuff. And, you know, he'd grab his fan brush and he'd, you know, put a little paint on it, make a straight line, and then start doing this with it coming down, and you looking like, oh my God, that's a tree. And then he oh man, his way for making water though was, I still watch it to this day, man, and it's honestly like magic. Like he'd have made a tree line, okay, and then he takes his 2-inch brush, and right at the bottom of that tree line, he pulls the paint down, pulls it down, and then he goes across with it. And next thing you know, when you look at it, you realize he just made a reflection of trees in water. Just that fast. Like, man, dude was dope. Like, for real. He was dope, man. If you are an artist and you have not really watched The Joy of Painting, you need to go back and do it. Seriously. It's motivation. It sparks creativity, man. Like, this guy was work ethic just man, just blown up. Every painting that we saw on TV, Bob had already painted a reference painting. So what he would do is he would take some time and he would paint all these reference paintings, and then he would line them up to how he knew they were going to film for the show. So right off camera, there's a reference painting. So he's referencing, you know, just like people now use pictures as a reference when they paint or something like that. So he didn't have a picture of anything because it was all from his head. So he would paint it, set it off camera so we couldn't see it, and then he would recreate it. Of course, it's not going to be exactly the same. He wanted to make sure that we didn't know and didn't see that, because Bob was adamant about doing all of this in 26 minutes, excuse me. He wanted to show people you can make a fully blown oil painting in less than 30 minutes. And he did it every show. There was no editing, no camera trickery, nothing. What we saw on that TV was Bob Ross doing a complete painting in less than 30 minutes. Come on, man. Come on, man. It don't get no better than that. And man, I am going to figure out how to see the comments on this thing. For real. I'm gonna figure this out, man. This is not gonna get the best of me. I'm gonna figure this out. But yeah, man, Bob was this dude was just, oh man, his work ethic. His work ethic was through the roof, man. He worked so much, but Bob was a heavy smoker, and his health, it started to get the best of him toward the end. They did 31 seasons of The Joy of Painting, which was a little over 400 episodes, where he made a painting. Every episode, a different painting. That's a lot, man. There was a 30-second season, but Bob got too sick to complete it, so they never aired it. I think they were able to do like a few episodes of it, but he got too sick, and so they never aired it. Because the show was being filmed in Indiana. He actually lived in Florida, so after he got sick, he moved to Florida. But the other thing I didn't know was that there was a kids show that they were producing, and Bob was a part of that. They only filmed the pilot, and in the pilot, Bob was bedridden pretty much, man. But they still were able to film him at his house, doing. You don't see his body or anything. All you see his head. They did some film stuff, and his head is actually inside of a book, talking to the kids. And but yeah, he was sick. Matter of fact, if you go and you can find the last 2 or 3 episodes of season 31, the last ones, you'll see, man, he looks frail, he looks weak, he lost hair. Bob ended up having lymphoma. And, he went through some radiation treatment. And so his hair is not as puffy as it was. You could tell they tried to comb it out or whatever to make it look as good as possible. But he's frail when he's talking to the camera. But as soon as he grabs his brush and goes to that canvas, it's the same guy. Blazing across that canvas, man, doing stuff. And I talk about it a lot here, and I'm adamant about this, man. Art heals. It is therapy. When you can unlock your imagination and you can just be in the moment and not think about nothing else but what you're doing and what your mind is telling you to put on a canvas, or what your mind is telling you to snap a picture, or what your mind is telling you what type of dance move you want to come up with, and some really dope choreography and all of that. Man, let me tell you something. Ain't no greater thing than that. There's just not a greater thing than that, man. And I think that if we really start to take time to just be imaginative, right? Just be imaginative. Like, this is what Bob Ross was saying. He inspired so many people and showed so many people who normally wouldn't have thought of picking up a paintbrush to paint. Even people like me. Now, I am not a painter. I can't paint to save my life. But watching Bob Ross do it, first of all, made me think I could do it, but it also made me think that I could do other things. And that's what it's all about. Bob wasn't, if you watch the show, man, he was giving these little tidbits about art and creativity. He wasn't just talking about painting. He was talking about life. Like, literally life. Art, man, it can open up so many doors for us. and it can do so many things. And whatever that art is, whatever you feel like you need to create or do or whatever, man, get out there and do it. Just get out there and do it, man. Bob died young. He died at 52, July 4th, 1995. But his legacy is still there. We talk about it all the time about, wanting to have a legacy and all of that, man. And Bob Ross did it. Like, he did it, man. And there's a documentary out on it's on YouTube. It's The Joy of Painting, the story of Bob Ross. It's something like that. Just look it up on YouTube. There's several little documentaries people have put together. Messy folks tried to talk about. Bob had some business partners that I guess when he was on his deathbed was trying to take the company from him. And was trying to, block his son from getting, all that. You got people out there that like to talk about all that little messy stuff, man, and negate the fact of the contributions that this man gave to the flipping art community. It's silly. So don't pay no attention to none of that stuff, man. What is this right here? Oh, don't pay no attention to none of that stuff, man. Just find the documentary. It's about an hour or something long, man, and just watch it, and you'll see, man, he was a monster for real. And how he was on camera was how he was in real life. So methodical with how he did things that he wanted people. Like, Bob didn't realize what he was doing. It was ASMR. That's, that sound stuff that people do now. How soft his voice were. Listen, you watched it. He was talking soft. That brush, that sound the brush made across the canvas. The palette knife, when he would scrape in things with the palette knife, that scratching sound across that canvas, man, that is, and maybe it's just because I love art so much, but that sound is just, it does something to you. It's relaxing. And man, I just think that we gotta get back to that, man, for real. We gotta get artistic. But anyway, man, I need y'all to bear with me. I am still trying to learn. I'm using Ecamm for this, so if any of y'all are professionals at Ecamm, holler at me. I got some questions because there's still some stuff I can't figure out. But like, what is that? What is this on my screen? See, this is what I'm talking about. Just stuff just everywhere, man. I don't know, man. I don't know. It is what it is, though. We made it through it. But listen, I'm gonna continue these, man. I don't know what other artists I'm gonna grab or bring up to talk about, but I think we need to celebrate some of these pioneers, man, in art that's made a lot of this stuff possible. Even in my niche, this filmmaking and videography realm, man, I think we gotta start. Matter of fact, I know exactly who I'm gonna talk about next. I know exactly who I'm gonna talk about next. I'm gonna talk about my favorite director. I ain't gonna tell y'all who it is yet, because I got a few of them, but this cat right here, yeah, we gonna talk about him next time. I do not know when. I might. What's today? Tuesday. Maybe I'll do it next Tuesday. Maybe I'll do it. Well, no. Let me not lie to y'all. I ain't gonna lie to y'all, man. It might not be next Tuesday. Hopefully it won't be another month, but I don't think if it's next Tuesday, I'll make sure to put it out there. Y'all know, all right? But look, man, y'all make sure that y'all tune in, man, when I do these things, and let's just chop it up. Well, I'm gonna figure out how I can see the comments on this thing so I can interact with y'all. That's what I want. I want to be able to interact with people as I'm doing this. And right now, man, I can't figure. All I can see is myself and a bunch of this other gibberwashy stuff that Ecamm has on my screen, but I don't see nothing where I can see the comments. That doesn't make sense to me. That is absolutely ridiculous. Makes no sense whatsoever. And ECAM, if you're watching, or somebody that worked for ECAM, you are a ridiculous person. And I hope you can't find your left shoes in the morning. Now, how about that? All right. Man, listen, y'all be easy. I'm going to get up out of here, man. I ain't want to be before y'all long. And like I say, we'll get another one cracking, and hopefully, you know, yeah, I can get consistent with it, all right? Y'all be easy, man. Y'all, peace out.
You know what I'm saying? Ha 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 ha. Hands held high, raise them up to the sky. Never let them low, only thought you should know. Hands held high, raise them up to the sky. Never let them low, go, go. I got about 100 reasons to leave the party, but I will not.